The review covers 12 months, but every example your manager gives comes from the last 3 weeks. A recent deadline rescue receives most of the praise. A recent mistake receives most of the concern. Months of steady work in the middle are barely mentioned. That pattern matters, but it does not prove that the manager is biased, careless, or acting with a particular motive. One plausible mechanism is recency. In some performance evaluation research, events near the end of a sequence influenced overall ratings more than events in the middle. Recent information can also be easier to retrieve when someone is trying to summarize a long period from memory. That supports a possibility, not a diagnosis of your review. The practical question is whether the discussion represents the full period and whether older work can be made easier to evaluate. Start with observable clues. Do the examples cluster around the latest project? Is a middle-of-year deliverable missing even though it was tied to an important goal? Does one recent problem overshadow a longer pattern? Does the manager ask you to remind them what happened earlier? Those observations describe the review conversation. They do not tell you why the pattern occurred. Notice whether recency is helping or hurting you. A recent rescue can make an ordinary year look stronger than the record supports. A recent error can make a strong year look weaker. The same response works in both directions. Bring the evaluation back to the defined period and the evidence. If the recent success deserves special weight, the manager should be able to explain why. If the recent error reflects a broader pattern, the earlier record should help show that pattern rather than relying on one event. Several other explanations may fit. The goals may have changed, making recent work genuinely more important. Earlier work may not have met the standard you believed it met. A manager may have feedback or business information you have not seen. A recent event may carry greater consequences than routine work. The review period may also be defined differently from the calendar you assumed. Before challenging the conclusion, find out what period, goals, and weighting the review is supposed to use. The lowest risk response is not to say, "You have recency bias." That label invites an argument about the manager's mind. Rebuild the evidence instead. Divide the actual review period into quarters or other meaningful stages. For each stage, list the goal, the work completed, the outcome, the date, and a verifiable source, such as an approved project record, shared deliverable, metric, or written feedback. Keep it concise enough to review in a few minutes. Choose 3 to 5 outcomes, not every task you touched. An outcome can show that a project shipped, a problem was prevented, a process became clearer, a client decision moved forward, or another team could complete its work because of your contribution. Include collaboration without erasing your role. If several people contributed, name the shared result and state your part precisely. Avoid claiming sole credit for teamwork. Prevention work needs special care because its success may look like nothing happened. Do not claim every quiet week as proof of your impact. Connect the work to a documented risk, action, and result. For example, show that a checklist was adopted, a known failure point was reviewed, or an issue was caught before release. If the evidence only shows activity and not outcome, label it honestly as an action rather than converting it into a result. The middle of the year often disappears because records are scattered across tools. Do not dump every email into the review. Link to the approved source and summarize the decision or outcome in one line. A reviewer should be able to verify the point without searching through a private message archive. Remove customer, employee, or confidential information that does not belong in the review packet. Add trade-offs and lessons where they matter. A result is more credible when the record shows what changed, what constraint existed, and what you would improve. Do not inflate ordinary duties into dramatic wins. The purpose of the page is retrieval, not self-celebration. It gives the manager a fair chance to compare the recent examples with evidence from the whole period. Send the summary before the review when the process allows it. A neutral message can say, "I pulled the review period into one page so we can compare the full year." Another useful question is, would it help if I map these outcomes to the goals? During the conversation, ask, which results should carry the most weight, and why? Those questions seek the evaluation rule instead of accusing someone of using the wrong one. Listen to the answer. If the manager explains that priorities changed, ask when the change took effect, and how earlier goals will be evaluated. If an older outcome is discounted, ask what evidence or standard is missing. If the recent project truly deserves more weight, the explanation may be reasonable. If the manager simply forgot earlier work, the dated map gives them a practical way to correct the record. If the conversation becomes a disagreement, separate 3 questions. Did the event occur? Does the evidence support the claimed outcome? How much should that outcome weigh in the review? You may agree on the first 2 and still disagree on the third. Asking which question is unresolved prevents a memory dispute from becoming a vague argument about attitude or personality. One conversation may not change a rating, and no document guarantees recognition. The page can still improve the quality of the discussion and reveal whether the disagreement is about memory, evidence, expectations, or weighting. Keep the distinction clear. A missing example is different from a disputed result. A disputed result is different from a changed goal. Each needs a different response. If the same documented pattern repeats and has serious consequences, preserve the relevant records and use the organization's normal review, HR, or professional support channel when appropriate. Do not assume that escalation guarantees a particular outcome. Follow policy, protect private information, and describe events in documents rather than diagnosing motive or personality. Recent work becomes powerful when it is the easiest evidence to retrieve. Your response is to make the full period equally retrievable, a small number of dated outcomes tied to goals supported by records and discussed with calm questions. In the next episode, we will make that habit easier by building the project recap that makes credit and contribution simpler to trace while the work is still fresh.